Hey, 1st through 5th graders, this is our last week in our series in Psalm 23, a chapter in the Bible that was written as a song about how God is like our shepherd. One thing that shepherds do for their sheep is provide for them. And the verse that we're going to focus on today is Psalm 23:5. Let's read it. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Some of your versions may say that your cup is overflowing with blessings. In today's lesson, we're celebrating how God overflows our cup with blessings. If you had a cup, what drink would you want overflowing in it? Water, lemonade, tea, soda? What's your favorite drink? Okay, so maybe our cups aren't overflowing with delicious drinks, but our cups do overflow with blessings from God, like His love and goodness. Let's find out about a woman in the Bible named Ruth, whose cup overflowed with blessings. We're going to start in Ruth chapter 2. Why don't you grab your Bibles, and I have a few other things to get together. We'll meet back here. All right, we're going to use this cup as our cup of blessings. Ruth's story in the Bible started out with a full cup of blessings. She was married and had a lot of family. But then her husband, her brother-in-law, and her father-in-law all died. It might have felt like her cup was completely empty. Maybe she felt like her blessings had run out. But her story was not finished. It tells us in the Bible that Ruth started following her mother-in-law Naomi, and they went to Judah, where Naomi was from. God started giving her blessings. Each time we hear a blessing, we're going to add it to our cup. First, Naomi and Ruth needed food. I wondered if they were worried. If you went somewhere new and had no idea how you were going to provide for yourself, would you be worried? Well, Ruth decided to go to a farm owned by a rich relative of her father-in-law. She was hoping to pick up any grain that the workers on the farm had missed. Ruth didn't get just a little bit of grain. Listen to this. And you can go ahead and open up your Bibles to Ruth 2, chapter 2, verses 8 through 9. Let's read it together. Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, don't go in any other field to gather grain. And don't even leave this one. Stay here with my young women. Watch where my men are reaping, and follow the young women in that field. I have ordered my young men not to touch you. When you're thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the young men have drawn." Well, let's continue on and read verses 17 and 18. So Ruth gathered grain in the field until evening. Then she separated the grain from its husks. She had about half a bushel of barley. She picked it up and went into the town, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gathered. Ruth also took out what she had left over from lunch and gave it to Naomi. Wow, God sure blessed Ruth with food. Let's add that to our cup. Also, Boaz gave her water to drink while she worked. Our cup is filling up, but that's not all that God did to bless Ruth. Let's read Ruth 4, verses 9 and 10. Then Boaz said to the leaders and all to the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. In addition, I have bought as my wife the Moabite Ruth, Mahlon's widow." Ruth got married to Boaz. Let's add that to our cup of blessings. And then Ruth had a baby. And guess what? That baby's name was Omed, who then grew up and had a son named Jesse, who grew up and had a son named David. That same David that grew up and wrote Psalm 23 that we're learning about. And he became a king. God definitely blessed Ruth, and He blesses us too. I still see a little bit of room in our cup. What's one way that God has blessed you? One of mine is the home that I live in, and since we're talking about children, my children are definitely a blessing to me. And with all of those blessings, our cup begins to overflow. And God does that for us. Well, God does give us blessings. Let's take a little bit closer look at that. I'm going to need some extra stuff for this one. Why don't you grab something to write with and to write on, like a pencil and paper, because you're going to be making some guesses. God bless Ruth with so many good things. God blesses us, and it's sometimes hard to count all of the blessings that He gives us. Let's see how well you do when there's a lot of something to count. I filled up some jars, and let me show you the first one, which is marshmallows. I want you to write down your guess. How many marshmallows do you think are in the jar? Paisley's going to guess too. All right, our next one are big pom-poms. Take a guess. How many pom-poms do you think are in this jar? All right, one more. Tiny little beads. How many beads do you think are in the jar? All right, you ready to see how many are actually in the jar? Are you ready, Paige? Here, let's put your guesses right here. All right, I want you to take the piece of paper under the marshmallows. It has how many are on there. Can you read the number?
243.
How many?
I don't know. 3 numbers.
243 marshmallows in this jar. Does that change any of your guesses for this one or
No.
this one? Doesn't change your guesses? Well, what did you guess for marshmallows?
100.
Paisley guessed 100. That was pretty close. All right, take the one under the pom-poms. Let's see how many pom-poms are underneath.
We got there once. I almost did it.
Well, tell them, how many were there?
25.
25 pom-poms.
And I got 60.
Oh, Paisley guessed 60. That was pretty close too. All right, one more, the beads. Can you get the guess, or can you get the amount underneath?
Oh my!
Do you know how much that is?
No!
I kind of estimated here because I was not going to count all of these beads, so I used a measuring cup. But I think there's around 5,800. What was your guess?
1,000.
1,000. That was pretty close. Well, how close was your guesses? Were you guys close or not so close? All right, let's talk about this a little bit more. How did you make your guess about the number of items? Did you consider the size of the items and how the bigger items might be taking up more room, and therefore there might be less of them? You probably compared the containers. We often judge how big or good a blessing in our life is in a very similar way. When we look at someone else and what they have and compare it to what we have or don't have, it can make our blessings look small and not as good. Like comparing the homes that we live in, our clothes, how many cool things we have, or what kind of trips we go on, are all ways that we can compare our blessings. But we probably can't even count all of the blessings that God has given us. And we can be thankful for even the ones that we consider to be small. You can add those to your prayers this week. Think of your blessings and thank God for them. I'm also going to send a little activity that you can do at home that's going to help you remember the blessings that God has given you. Since this is the last week in Psalm 23, let's take one more look at our pasture. Let me grab it. Well, let's remember back to what we've learned in this series. Just like a shepherd takes care of his sheep, God takes care of us. And as our shepherd, we have learned that God guides us and leads us. He protects us. He gives us rest. And if you remember, in green pastures and by flowing streams, He is with us in dark valleys. And today we learned that He provides for us and our blessings overflow. We We can think of blessings as a celebration. So let's add these streamers. And that's it for our Psalm 23 series. That brings us to our challenge this week. Let's do our memory verse for this series one last time. Do you know it by now? It's Psalm 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. And that is your one big challenge this week. Once you have it memorized, send me a video so I can send you something in the mail. We're going to start a new memory verse next week when we start our new series. I'll see you then.